Can you ever imagine how 4 kids from the same family die altogether? Is it possible to happen so? Do you know a genetic disorder would be the reason for a family to be destroyed? Let's see how a convicted mother and the death of her 4 children end up. In August of 2018, on a Wednesday morning, Carola Garcia de Vinuesa was born on her grounds at a paper-strewn station desk in her light-filled headquarters in Canberra when the phone rang. The caller was an ex-student in the immunology division at the Australian National University, where Vinuesa toiled, and he had a tale to brief. In 10 years, he narrated that 4 babies and 1 Australian family had parted in sleep. The elder was just a year and a half. No one had discovered proof of violence. But in 2003, the baby's mom, Kathleen Folbig, was sentenced to suffocate them to death. The 36-year-old, now deemed the most prolific female killer in Australian history, was punished with 40 years in prison. The researcher conveyed to Vinuesa that the trial did not sit straight with several medical and lawful experts. They felt the prosecution had offered some questionable medical proof condemning Folbig. Vinuesa walked as she heard. She had not heard of Folbig. The pupil on the phone, now a sound lawyer, kept going. He told her he was toiling with Folbig's legal crew and wondered if Vinuesa, who used cutting-edge genome sequencing gear to explore the grounds of rare diseases, might aid. He emailed her a weighty pile of case files, and Vinuesa scanned through them. Pathology statements, forensic information, death diploma, and medical logs. As she scanned, she was pounded by a few nosy details. She instantly saw similarities with the case she had performed on just a month before. 4 infants in a Macedonian family had passed, and no one could explain why. After analyzing their DNA, Vinuesa found 3 genetic modifications in the children that were nearly certainly deadly together. The mixture was also extremely rare. She had calculated there was a 1 in 64,000 probability that the genes would show up in 4 siblings. Yet, there they stood. Now scrolling through the records on her screen, Vinuesa believed an also rare occurrence might have smashed the Folbigs. That night, she wrote an email to Folbig's attorney and voiced she was in. As she explored the breakdown, she supposed that her scientific work would guide the legal approach nearer to the truth. She had no idea that over 2 all-consuming years, she would cease encountering agonizing inquiries about her own life as a scientist and parent. In her letter to the attorney, she wrote that, as a mother, she could not judge any more deserving reason to invest time and effort. She finds it tough to accept someone is sitting in jail for this. When Kathleen's mother resisted living with her father, he stabbed her 24 times. As she fibbed passing, he nestled her in his arms, busting her face while he paused for the fuzz to arrive. For a year, baby Kathleen was placed under the aunt's and grandmother's supervision. Then she was sent to a foster family in Newcastle, a coal mining village 100 miles north of Sydney. The new home provided and clothed Kathleen and sent her to an academy, but her foster mom was hard and, according to tribunal records, hit her with the grip of a feather duster when she misbehaved. Her foster dad was foreign. One weekend, she was out jigging at a club when she met a stunning man anointed Craig Folbig. He was 23, well-spoken, and labored as a forklift driver at the largest mining establishment in town. They began dating, lost in love, and momentarily drove into an apartment in a suburb of Newcastle. He was keen to start a family. Kathleen, too, dreamed of stability. In 1987, the couple married when Kathleen was 20 years old. A year and a half later, in February 1989, Kathleen gave delivery to their foremost child. They called the boy Caleb. On February 20th, Kathleen recalls getting up to feed the baby at midnight and returning to sleep. About 2 hours later, she awoke to go to the bathroom and check on him. Caleb was not respiring. Her newborn. There was something wrong with her infant, she cried. Craig sprinted over and tried CPR, notifying Kathleen to call an ambulance. Paramedics were not able to revive the boy. He was enunciated deceased and 19 days old. The Folbig's second child, Patrick, was born a year later. Tardily one night, when he was 4 months old, Kathleen listened to Patrick coughing. She stirred to his crib to calm him, and he fell asleep. Around early morning, she peered in on him and saw that he was lifeless, blue, and not subsisting. Craig again tried CPR while Kathleen contacted paramedics. They came quickly and flowed the baby to the hospital, where he was revived. The doctors at the hospital finalized that Patrick had mourned a mysterious syndrome that predominantly affects kids under the age of 1. Patrick was left with a brain injury that rendered partial blindness and chronic attacks and would now need almost continuous supervision. Kathleen, desiring to return to work after his birth, chose to stay home and care for the boy while Craig labored a challenging new job at a local car dealership. About 4 months later, on February 13, 1991, Kathleen called Craig at work, desperate. By the time Craig got home, Patrick had perished. Patrick was just 8 months old. In October 1992, Kathleen gave birth to a third child, and the pair named her Sarah. This time, the Folbigs pushed Sarah's bed into their bedroom so they could monitor closely as she napped. On August 30th, 1993, Craig put Sarah to bed around night. A few hours later, Kathleen recalls checking on her and hearing for her breath. When she could not hear anything, she turned on the light. Sarah was blue and static. She was enunciated deceased at 10 months and 16 days old. 3 years passed. The Folbigs moved to a new cottage. Their association was weakened. Kathleen had acquired weight and was concerned Craig would renounce her. She evolved obsessive about dieting and heading to the gym. The mates moved, yet again, to a townlet an hour's drive west of Newcastle. After that, Kathleen, now 30, got expectant one more time. On August 7, 1997, Laura was born. When she was 12 days old, medics did a full medical examination. They carried blood samples, performed the respite test, and reviewed her for inherited metabolic illnesses. Everything came back ordinary. Even so, medics sent the Folbigs home with a heart monitor that forwarded data straight to the hospital. Laura was a quiet, healthy baby, and she flourished. The Folbigs tossed her a great party for her first birthday and invited all the neighbors. Around 7 months later, Kathleen put Laura down for a morning doze. Shortly after, an ambulance was on the course to the house. Paramedics discovered Laura lying on the breakfast counter. She wasn't respiring. She had no pulsing. On March 1, 1999, Laura parted at 18 months, 22 days. The day Laura passed, Senior Detective Constable Bernard Ryan, a 31-year-old, got deeded to the case. Before that day, there had been almost no discussion about child murder. Postmortems of the first 3 Folbig kids nailed that each baby parted of natural causes. Caleb's and Sarah's demises were attributed to premature infant death syndrome, indicating that deaths were unexplained but didn't appear doubtful. Patrick's was established as asphyxia generated by an epileptic attack. Craig Folbig would subsequently express that he had the odd suspicion but couldn't get his head roughly until May 1999 when he came across a journal of his wife's and began reading. He told what he witnessed made him feel sick, and he momentarily proceeded to the police. In passages that featured laboriously in the case, Kathleen Folbig noted that Laura was a rather good-natured baby. It has kept her from the destiny of her siblings. She thought Laura was warned. She also documented she was her dad's daughter. Prosecutors indicated her comments while arguing it was nearly impossible that one lineage could have 4 children die of natural causes. But scientists behind the entreaty for Folbig's release say there is no proof to reinforce the smothering allegations. They stated that the assumption that one family is improbable to experience multiple demises is based on Meadows' law approach, which has since been negated. In 2018, after Folbig solicitors asked genetics to glance at the case, the researchers sequenced her genome and the genomes of her kids. They uncovered that she and her daughters had a rare changeover in a gene named COM2. The entreaty says that the mutation can induce sudden demise in infancy and youth. In a 2020 study, investigators deduced that the variant altered Sarah's and Laura's heartbeats and was a valid explanation for their demises. Further breakdown found that Caleb and Patrick held a different rare hereditary variant that, in examinations with mice, has been linked to epileptic demises at a young age, the Associated Press conveyed. The petition for Folbig's waiver claims that the benches have skipped medical proof in favor of variations of a mom's mysterious journal entries. It says a sensible person should question whether she murdered her children, adding that determining otherwise abandons medical science and the regulation that establishes the bar of proof. Folbig, whose punishment was lowered to 25 years on appeal, is not set to be freed until 2028. During the 2019 investigation, the AP documented a prosecutor told her the journal entry noting a bit of aid approached access to kill her child. Comment down if you think the genetics have caused the 4 kids to die, or was it all Kathleen's plan? Or, as the reports state, is she innocent? Until then, adios.